Welcome to Stop Now, a social experiment enterprise where we stop, listen, and share. And today looks like I am leading everything. Nate is not with us, but he'll be back soon. And I'm here with Amar and JK as usual. So we're going to have a little discussion about the H-1B visa and the current layoffs that have been happening throughout the tech industry at a very alarming rate, only just over 2 months into the year. So, JK and Amar, how are you two doing today?
Yeah, hi Walter. I'm good. Thank you.
Good. And how are you doing, JK?
I'm good, Walter. Thank you again. This is a very interesting topic, and it's due, a long due, I would say, because the market is fluctuating, and you have done quite a research on that, and you'll be the better person to kick off the topic and tell us what we found in that.
Yes, I recently did some research into that, which will be on our site soon. I'm going to have it pull up in front of me just to make sure I get all the numbers exactly correct. So what basically has been happening with the um, regarding the tech industry and the H-1B visa since the COVID time. The world economy stagnated in 2020 and 2021, but for some reason, in the United States, the tech industry, they were, well, not for some reason, but people were still using even more tech at the time. The tech industry kept hiring at alarming rates during the height of COVID, where there was lockdowns and where everything was very restricted. And the industry was hiring at very alarming rates. But this year, it seems to have everything has seemed to really hit a point in time where the industry is cutting jobs, even though a lot of these companies are still extremely profitable. And look at the numbers in front of me right now. According to data from layoffs.FYI from last year, over 120,200 tech jobs have been cut this year already. There was only just over 161,000 cut in the entirety of last year. And they've been coming at such an alarming rate, which a lot of them have been H-1B visa holders. And what's been very interesting about that, a lot of H-1B visa holders have been coming forward, like fully on the record, talking about their situation, which hasn't really been a thing before, because there's some articles in Wall Street journals where H-1B visa holders were talking about the situation. On LinkedIn, people were openly talking about, yeah, I just got laid off. It's a really big problem. We got the 60 days to find a new job, which if you've been in a job market at an enterprise level, finding a full-time employment in 60 days can be a bit difficult. That's why things like Cobra for insurance, and that's why if you get laid off, they have to pay you get money for a certain amount of time, because it's not exactly easy to get a job in that period of time, especially if you technically are supposed to be you're supposed to leave the country in that time period. So it's a lot of interesting data that we can discuss, and as to why this is happening right now. Do either of you have any ideas on that? And is this a thing that you think will bring the rubber to the road when it comes to the H-1B visa? Because it's going to expose a lot of issues, because a lot of the H-1B visa holders are holding down these industries and these jobs, and because there's not enough American citizens to stay in these to fill all these jobs. So do you think this is a thing that's going to have to be addressed in Congress, or what are your thoughts on that?
This is something quite interesting for not just for our audience. It's a general topic, right? So, tech industry layoff is it's not quite often, but then as you pointed out, even it's like demand and supply and what they do based on the market, or if it's like a dominoes effect, like one company triggers this and oh, everybody follows the suit and say like, okay, let us lay off, this is the good time like for us. And we just don't know what exactly triggers them like to make these kind of activities. And as you said, right, this impacts the H1B visa holder. And why do we take this topic and discuss about it? And as you know that like we have been doing the experiment, and I'm focused exclusively on the experiment alone, that gives us more insight on why they do those things. It's the banking industry particularly, even still after even we hear a lot of story online, so many sob stories, people getting fired like for no reason after working hard like for a decade, 10, 11 years. They both lose job and their visa status are hanging in the balance, right? So that's a different pressure point altogether. But even as a US citizen, right, people who lose job, that is the question I have for you, Walter, right? Because from the research it's not clear and evident for me to understand if they are non-immigrant, if they are on a visa, are they allowed to claim unemployment benefits?
For the H-1B visa holder, I would hope so. But that that would seem to be the most humane thing to do. But I'm not 100% sure that that's going to depend on the exact language of that, 100-page text that made the H-1B visa legal and that started the program. So that would be difficult. I would find it hard pressed that companies wouldn't provide some kind of compensation for being laid off just because they're an immigrant. That would be horrific.
Yeah, so that is what our story is, right? So many victims, they don't come forward, and some of them who came forward are ready to disclose that. Even if they are willing to share it anonymous, that will help us like to cover these stories. But the point here, what I'm trying to make is, they are not entitled for unemployment benefits or even for that grace period, 2 months. It's like for them to pack things and run. It looks
Right.
like
Yeah.
that. That is exactly my point, right? Even in our experiment, we tried to do that with one of the biggest employer and with the bank. They didn't say like it's a layoff. They just let go because it's a contract, and the employer has to find suitable other opportunities. But in spite of it, like they gave us some time, but that was also uh, on a good side. They provided almost a month and they paid, and then they said like, where do you want to book the ticket to fly back? So it is like they are not offering a solution. They don't want to take the burden of keeping the person here in US, because the law clearly states if they are an H1B employer, which means they have job in their company, and if they don't have the job, they have to withdraw their petition and they have to send them back to their country, or they have to, the employee has to have the responsibility to maintain their status, right? They have to find a different employer who can transfer the visa, who can start paying them. This is where like my concern, the stories are really true, right? It's not fake or made up, cooked up stories kind of thing. They are saying that like to maintain the status and stay in this country, they are paying money to the employers to run the payroll, and that is the choice they make, saying that like, okay, whether it is legal or not, well, I am being protected by my employer is doing me a favor, and employees agree to that and they get exploited. So that is the cruel nature of even H1B. And also the big corporates, they are under pressure, right? Because they cannot fire US citizens or independent people like green card holders or permanent resident or anybody like visa holder. They cannot discriminate just because visa holders, if they fire them, they will lose the status and they have to exit the country. So I will not fire those candidates and I will fire the US citizen. That will create whole lot of other problems, right, in an organization. So
Oh yeah.
I don't know how do they make that decision and choices, and how do they balance it. So that is why like it's a tough decision, I understand. But then why do they, in the first place, if they don't have the demand or supply thing, why do they hire so many people and then like they fire them? Just like in our experiment, to conclude my initial thoughts, statement is like, we have been in different client project, and most of it like they don't utilize us to the maximum, not even maximum, 80%. just like one simple example, MetLife, you know that, right? So for almost 6 months, they did not give us any work. They kept us idle for almost the entire 6 months, and still we got paid. So, how efficient they run their corporate business is the big question here. It's not just the employment, it's not just the job. What do you have to say about it, right?
I think that's just that it comes down to, I think, just billion-dollar companies not caring because they make so much money, and then when someone comes back from stockholders come back and like, oh, we didn't meet expectations, then they're like, what's the solution? They're not going to cut the salary of all the the executives, so they just fire people. I think I almost said indiscriminately, but in this case, there might be some discrimination going on in how they decide who they're firing, and to just cut cost, even though they're still profitable, is what a lot of these companies are doing. So I don't think they necessarily even need to be making these cuts, and because if they had, I mean, I would assume somebody in the entire process thought they were going to use these people effectively when they hire them, but a lot of these places just aren't organized and they make so much money it doesn't really hurt them that much to pay someone, for example, 6 months like $60,000 and they don't do anything. That's like pennies to them. So it doesn't really matter so much. So I mean, I don't. So I think it comes down to pretty much quarterly things that come out and that says that, oh, you didn't meet expectations. So the first thing corporations do in the United States is cut is start cutting people. And then it's like, okay, now we can reach expectations. I mean, it's happening at Twitter. I mean, Microsoft is doing it. So it's just the way companies work here. Instead of holding executives responsible, they fire people who need the job and need that next paycheck. So it's just a unfortunate way of how things are currently working.
The people have rights to bring people in your country by H1B visa. Is it only for the organization or any company can do that, or it can be do by individually?
For the H-1B, a company has to sponsor that. So, like I couldn't. Well, I mean, well, technically, I do have a company. So if I sponsored someone, I guess, and I was looking to hire someone on the H-1B, technically, I guess I could. It is. I don't think there's a size limit of the company that can do it. So as long as you're, a company and you're running their payroll, and you can prove that this position needs to be filled by someone that's not a U.S. citizen, you can file for that petition. It happens a lot. Sometimes they make it's for work visas kind of work like that. Sometimes they make people leave the country to re-up it and then come back in. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, so it's the United States isn't considered an immigration friendly place, no matter who's in office. So I've heard from people like how hard it is just to get in, even if you're from like England. It's very hard to get in here. Like I've never experienced that since I'm a U.S. citizen, but I've heard so many stories about how the United States almost acts like they do not want immigrants here at all, or even some kind of people who are just coming on vacation that make it really difficult.
Yeah, to the point, I thought like to share some data as well here. So some of the interesting ones like that comes up in terms of tech layoffs. Mini media reports it, right? So one I picked up from the uh, top one, like Crunchbase News. So they said like February marks the third worst month. So the data is like amazing. It shows uh,
There are a couple of things can go into this. It's the tech industry hiring so much during COVID, when the economy was stagnating. The war in Ukraine has caused the economy to stagnate and inflation. So it's at some point it feels like they were setting themselves up to have to do this unless there was going to be a quick bounce back from inflation. I guess you can say they didn't. No one in the tech industry in the United States expected there to be a war in Ukraine that was going to hurt the global economy even more. Because if not for that, probably yes, there wouldn't be the inflation issues right now. So it seems like that could be playing a gigantic role in this as well, at which also in some of the research that there was over 10,000 I might pronounce this incorrect Tigalu individuals from India were fired in the last layoffs in February. So it's a very difficult thing for H-1B visa holders. A lot of them are speaking out and like, I don't know what am I going to do? Some people were they were laid off while they were out of country on the H-1B visa, and they were afraid to come back in the country to make it feel like they're violating because they would never come back. And other people just literally bought cars wow, and they're like, I got fired, so if I have to leave, I can't sell my car in 60 days. I can't sell my house in 60 days. So what exactly am I supposed to do? And like, the system is just it's set up for failure. I mean, also when you look at it now, it's the reason why they aren't really holding up to meeting demands is because that at one point in 2001, the cap was at 195,000 for H-1B visa holders yearly, and now it's back down to the original number of 65,000. So we don't. So there's a big issue with why so many companies are in the United States are needing workers, which the university level education in the United States is been dropping in the last decade from where it was. So companies need advanced workers in those fields to do those jobs, but we're treating H-1B visa workers like this. Who's going to want to come here and do this again over and over again? I mean, I know there's a gigantic backlog, but eventually, if this keeps happening and there's no help for these workers, and they have to drop everything and go back to a place that they may haven't lived for over 10 years, then this isn't going to be good for the United States economy in the long run.
From my experience, one things I can add here that I saw that most of the recruiter, when they send a JD or job description to the candidate, that's time they forbid the candidate to apply for this position because who are H-1B candidate. So they forbid them to apply this position. So why they do that? And what is happening when they apply for this position? Why they are not getting the job?
I mean, technically they would be overstaying their visa if they stay past the 60 days, but what are they supposed to do if they have interviews? Like, it's such a messed up thing, because if they do overstay a visa, they can be restricted from ever coming back on any visa. So what do you do? Go to a job interview, try to get the job, or do you leave the country and do interviews from abroad? Like, there's just so much that seems like it wasn't even thought about when the H-1B visa was drafted, that it needs to be completely wiped and redone, or someone needs to go through and we're just revising this entire thing and starting over and still just calling it the H-1B visa, but it's something else. Like, there's no reason for this to really be happening at all. Is my thing looking at this is like, why are we doing this when it's helping absolutely positively nobody? I mean, this was a law drafted in 1990 in the Immigration Act of 1990. This is what the H-1B visa was created in. And we revise legislation all the time. It's been like over 30 years. It's time to revise this to make it work for everyone, because it's not working for anyone. And some of the data I did find saw that when the United States brings in a H-1B visa or holders or other visa holders to work in these tech fields, the economy in those areas go up compared to when there's less. So it's clear that they're helping the United States economy, besides some of the stigma from racism and bigotry about foreigners that gets stemmed up when someone wants to try to get some votes. But when you look at all the data, it's like immigrants working here help the United States economy, so we should make it easier and less stressful for them to be here. That's kind of where I'm at this point.
So we can conclude and declare that like it's a modern slavery. And that's what like our
Yes.
research. And because Walter, come on, data points clear indication of what is happening, what is at fault, as you mentioned, right? But people play with the emotions, and they do the politics, and they continue to exploit. That's how like I see, right? So they need, as you said, right, they need control to hold people and get the work done from them and throw them out. So that's the cruel attitude of white people, right? So that is why like
I haven't seen any data point at all. I mean, if anyone listening to this has find something, or you can email us, or you can email me directly, and you can talk to me about it. You can come on here if you want to debate it. Go ahead. But I haven't seen one single data point that says that immigrant workers, this blanket immigrant workers that are skilled that come here to do those works hurt the economy. I mean, even technically what is are classified as low skilled workers, they help the economy because Americans don't want to do the hard labor jobs in the sun and all that kind of stuff. Even if it's paying like $28, $30 an hour, Americans don't want to do that. But that's more on the illegal immigration front. So it's like there's just no reason to do this. Like, why hurt the economy just because you people across the board to have this whole stigma about immigrants and immigration and what that means for America? I'm like, it doesn't. It means the economy is doing better. I mean, like even on the basic level, even not even on the human levels, like that's all you're worried about is how the United States is doing at an economic level. It helps. Like it helps. There's no data point that I can find. Again, if I'm missing something, or if someone wants to make an argument as to why, like you free to contact me and talk to me about it because I've yet to see it. Spent over 8 hours looking and looking at various data points and didn't see a single thing that says that this is bad. So the H-1B visa is a good idea. The idea behind it is good. The legislation and how it works in practice is not good because it's why are we doing this? I know some people will probably pull back at the term modern day slavery, but that's why the word term modern is that yes, these people are still being paid. These people are getting paid, which slaves weren't across the world for thousands of years. But when you put them in these situations, which I've I've seen and been asked certain things already during some of the undercover thing. I won't go too deep into that have been asked of me as a U.S. citizen, and I'm like, what? Like, you literally should not be asking me that information in the way you're asking me that information. Imagine what that's like for a H-1B visa holder who's trying to get here to make money so they can help their family. Like those people are put in a situation where I got to answer this recruiter with this stuff, or they're not gonna they're not gonna submit me for this job, and I can't go directly to the company because these companies work with all these third party recruiters to do the work for them. So when you have no choice, or if you're fleeing a country there's war or poverty, like what your choices, you have choices, but there's a choice that could lead to prosperity, and there's a choice that could lead to more, destitution. So though when you're put in that situation, you're going to try to get towards prosperity and not go back to destitution. So it's a choice, but who's gonna who's going in that situation is going to be like, no, I'm not even going to try. So it's a very it's a system that needs to be fixed. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah, from Jack's word, I can say that it's really a modern slavery because when a S1B candidate or a green card holder go to apply a job, there's time the recruiter or the job holder they ask him to provide lots of documents, suppose NTL card, visa card, or estate card, estate ID, like those documents they asked him to provide. But when someone said that I am a US citizen, that's time they don't ask him to provide those documents. Don't you think it's a discrimination, Walter?
I've been asked to provide some things, but yeah, it's I don't understand why a recruiter's asking anything for any of that kind of stuff because especially in because that's not a thing that happens outside of jobs like this where H-1B visa holders are getting. Because I've definitely never been asked to do those things before. They were like, okay, you're hired and we need to do this background check stuff. That's when those things happen. And that's when I'd be absolutely positively happy. While you're doing any of that stuff before someone is hired, is what are you like? You're asking to be sued for some kind of discrimination because like what there's no purpose of like a recruiter can't do anything with that information other than steal identities. So it's like, what? You do not need this information at all. Like, you're not going to do anything with it. Like, I kind of want to tell them that sometimes because it gets very old. And I was like, you don't need that. Like, I've been hired in this country before. I know how the system works. I know when I need to submit that, and I know that I can see how it's going to be secure. Why do you want that information from me? So for H-1B visa, you've got to I mean, I'm assuming you have so many different documents that are personal that can be stolen and sold on the dark web. If people don't know about that, we could do a completely other show about the dark web and the deep web and what that is and how that can be a danger for H-1B visa holders or people trying to get in the country. Well, because if you give this information to someone, they can just put it up there, sell it, make lots of money, and there's very little you can do about it but try to stop it from happening again. So there's just a lot of problems that the recruiters aren't being checked on that to me is if that was happening to you US citizens on a regularity at a wide scale level, there was no way that there wouldn't be outcries about it because it is not a thing that happens.
Walter, to that point, right? So we are a little bit taken back and surprised, right? So you also have experienced it through our experimental lab. So that's why like you are voicing it. But many people they don't believe this, right? Oh, this is all like cooked up story, man. Like I don't believe this is not happening because we know that like all these things are happening because it's like a contract killer, right? So the companies don't want to do it directly. We heard that like General Motors and Ford, big companies are asking the other vendors, right? The Cognizant, TCS, and other recruiting companies to ask for these details
Someone
beforehand
is that,
even
yeah.
submitting the
Yeah.
application, right? So you have that front end experience of okay, give me your full social security, as you said, like those are complete violation, and why do they need it? They can sell it out your information, and
Oh
if
yeah, I'll talk about that right now. Like we won't play the recording of that, but this is the one argument I've gotten into with a recruiter. I got a little upset with him. This is the second time it is. The first time it happened was with a U.S. recruiter. With the same process, they ask you for both of these conversations were like 12 to 15 minutes. They go through all of your information, ask you for a bunch of things, and then at the end, after they collect everything they would need to steal your identity, they then ask you for your social security number, full social, not four numbers, which even recruiters don't need that either. I mean, that's a thing they don't need. But I was asked for a full social, and this was the second time it happened in a couple of days. I got upset, and I was like, we're going to talk to this guy again because I'm mad about it and see what he says. We talked to him again. He was like, no, it's not like that. I was like, did you ask me for my full socials? No. He's like, yes, but it's not like that. We can submit you for another position. He was like, no, you asked me for my full social security number. Like, why? Who is asking you for that? And he was like, the hiring company. I don't remember which hiring company off the top of my head, so I'm not going to say any name for legal purposes. So he was like, they're asking me for this. They said that you need that for this position to apply if you're a U.S. citizen, and you give me your full social right now. I'm like, no, like I'm not. No, it's not onboarding. Then I said like, let me talk to your account manager. He was like, can't do that. And I was like, well, okay, then have him call me back and talk about it because like this is not a proper thing. And then yeah, he said he was gonna have someone call me, email me back, never did. So there was another trigger because I wanted to see something. There was another company
Walter,
that was doing.
Walter, I have a question. I need to stop you there. So, how do we even stop these things, right? So now we have evidence and we have proof, right? We can connect this to the companies, right? Because of their email saying that okay, this was requested by the bank, and we are recruiting it for bank. Their link to the bank and their employees or contractors there. From that, like we can clearly establish it. But the problem
Oh,
here is like,
I know the company, no, but I shouldn't say it. But yeah,
yeah,
I remember the
how do we
company.
even stop this, right? That's my point. And the second question is, how do you even find out if you give your social, right? If it is your social is US citizen social, or green card permanent resident social is different, or H1B visa holder social is different, or what? I don't think that like Social Security Administration discriminates between nationality. It has nothing to do with your social security number, right? From that number, they
Right.
cannot identify your status. That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe that is. I mean, if you're a U.S. citizen, you're going to get a social security number, and there's no special indicator that you were, born here or naturalized. No, there's not going to be that. That would be a huge
Yeah,
a
that's
constitutional
the
thing.
point, right? My question is, right? Uh, you are saying U.S. citizen. How do I know you are a U.S. citizen? If Amar, for example, Amar says like he is a U.S. citizen, so is there a way that they can validate that like he is a U.S. citizen or not? How do we validate that? That itself
Not
is
a
a
recruiter. Not a recruiter. That's why they don't need the information. A background check company can run all that information, but a recruiter can't. And if you're not hiring me, why the hell do you need to know that? I mean, like that's the thing. Like, honestly, I don't. If I went to a lawyer right now and say, "Hey, I want to sue them for this because they were asking this," like, you told them no, right? It's like, yeah, then there's really nothing you can. What are you suing them for? Is like, what do you mean? Like, I've got to give them this to get a job. That's kind of some sort of violation of something because no one should be giving out personal identifiable information to a recruiter that a company that they will because I even have it in an email where another one's like, yeah, the company asked for that. I like got them to say it in email because they're not that bright. And I was like, oh, cool. Thank you for admitting that in email that you're going to ask me for my full social and your bosses were told that by this hiring company. It's like, that's cool. That's evidence. I'll keep that. So it's like, I, I don't know what can be done to stop it other than thousands of people coming forward saying that's happened to them and a big investigation by some federal bureau into these companies doing it. And there's going to be probably a billion dollar fines for multiple companies. And then they're going to just figure out another way to be pieces of garbage. I mean, it's like the money doesn't hurt them because they can just make the money back. So, I mean, I don't really know how to completely stop it,
yeah, yeah, true,
unfortunately.
right? So that is why, like, we are not alone in this fight. Like, I did some research and found out this interesting thing. I'll share this because it is on the public domain. People can also see it. It is tying to Bill Gates. I don't know how, but then this is a site that is having few videos, and they named it as the channel as Stop H1B, which is one of our mission. And it is a short video like Bill Gates talking about H1B in the Congress and other things. So if we play this out in our channel, it will be a violation. So I'm not playing this out. I'm just showing that like people can watch this. Uh, there is a
Yeah, we
three
can do
part
that.
like chapter about Bill Gates and the H1B visa.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be this is something someone in Congress should be looking at to fix because who does it the H-1B work for? Because in the information I looked at, the Economic Policy Institute did a gigantic um, report on this in about 2021, I believe it was, where they just looked into violations that were allegedly happening. Like they even had a couple of gigantic recruiting companies admit in internal emails that they were purposely underpaying H-1B visa holders. And also, they were found that these people they were using U.S. citizens to train these people, and the companies were firing them so they could pay the H-1B visas holders less money. So there's this all kinds of discrimination and cutting corners going on there, and it helps nobody in the long run because it's like H-1B visa holders are getting not paid what they're supposed to, and legally by the H-1B visa, they're supposed to be getting paid at the value of every worker in that industry. So legally, all companies paying H-1B visa holders less than the U.S. citizen are breaking the law. Like, period. You are breaking the law. Like, TCS got in trouble for it. I can say that because that's legally out there, and they paid a fine for it. That's everyone can go look that up. So it's just there's so many things wrong with this that and also I guess a problem why this doesn't get talked about as much is because a lot of these companies will donate to politicians, and then that's kind of like a legal bribe. Like, don't look the other way while we do this type of a thing,
Walter,
which is
you are,
fortunate.
I admire you bravely mentioned the name of $1 billion company where you had an interview also last week, I believe. So that's a fun way, like, to look at this. Again, this is an ongoing fight. We will be talking about it like forever. But thank you for bringing this topic and awareness. Probably we can uh, give our final thoughts and end this episode for this week.
Yeah, it's to me this is like the more you look into the situation, you hear the stories. It's not a good look for the United States, and and like countries like Canada, the United Kingdom are actively making it easier for workers to come to the countries because they look at what the United States is doing is like, oh, we can be more attractive to these workers because the United States is making it so hard, and they're going to come here. And Canada is booming in the gaming industry and the tech industry because they're making it easy for people to live in Canada and work, where the United States isn't. And why? I mean, you can go back to all kinds of stigma issues about immigrants here from honestly all walks of people that have issues with immigrants, both sides of the aisle, honestly. Um, I the whole stigma that these people are stealing jobs, and it's like they're not stealing anything. We don't have enough people to fill them. So if you want a good economy, these are booming industries across the world. Why aren't we making it easier for them to come here? Like, what is someone needs to answer that. And if someone says anything about terrorism, it's like, really, you're worried about that, but we are littered with guns, and so it's like, come on, these people aren't terrorists. They've been their background check has been gone through probably dozens of times. These people are fine. They're here to work. So like it's a frustrating thing, and some days I do get kind of frustrated and annoyed talking to recruiters through email and calls because it's just like, what are you even in doing? And it's always the same process. So it's like, like I know the questions that they're asking. They're not supposed to be asking me as a U.S. citizen. And if it wasn't for the experiment, I would be like, no, I'm not telling you that. This is not how a job process works. But seeing how this works, and then thinking how an H-1B visa holder would be doing this, trying to get a job if they're fired and do all this in 60 days, like that's unimaginable. So I guess that's kind of where I want to leave it. It's like it's not a process that can really work for everyone
Yeah, absolutely.
or most people.
All right. So, Amar, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I can say H-1B visa is, of course, a curse for the people. And when they are getting the visa and entering your country, that's time and they are feeling good. But when the company is going to hire him, they have been suffering a very bad life and they are going to be in bad situation. So, of course, it should be stopped.
All right. So here we go. We are at the end of this week episode. Thank you all. Again, Walter, it's your show. So let's wrap this up and conclude.
Yeah, we will be back next weekend. I believe we have a guest already scheduled for next weekend. I do believe, or maybe not. We'll look at the schedule. We'll be back either way. But yeah, we'll be lining up more guests. We are in conversations with 4 or 5 individuals right now, trying to get dates locked down. So there will be a lot of guests to talk about issues all around labor exploitation, trafficking, and how we can combat that around the world from a number of different levels and a number of different organizations. So there's a lot coming on the YouTube podcast front, and then we might be extending out to more places as well. So stay tuned. We're working on quite a bit.
Thank you all. Bye for now.
Bye.